Welcome to Reaper's Digest.
Hello. My name is Duke Ralston. I am the co-host of Tennessee Macabre.
And I am Blake Ray, lead singer of the band Blood Oaks and the co-founder of Pulp Factory Zine. And today we're talking about Cask of Amontillado.
Yes, we are.
By Edgar Allen Poe. What are you drinking today, Duke?
Well, I had a busy day, and I had a 6-pack of Big River IPA, and I didn't go get anything else because I love this beer. So I'm having Big River IPA.
There you go. I've got, let's see if you can see this. I bought this because of the label.
Oh, wow. Third Wind. I love the label.
Third Wind. Yeah, Third Wind by New Realm Brewing out of Georgia. And we're going to try it right now.
Okay.
So,
is it like a lager or an IPA or?
It is dry hop Belgian style triple.
Oh, okay.
And it is high gravity, so I'm only got the pint.
Yeah, those Belgians don't fool around.
Oh no, this is not a for play beer.
I had something one time at Loopy's. It was called Kersendonk.
Yeah,
and the guy come out and he said, "Man, this is the strongest beer I've ever had in my life. It's brewed by Trappist monks in Belgium, and they can only get it every once in a while." And well, anything that's called Kersendonk and you drink it, you can only imagine how bad it is. Woohoo, boy. Two of them.
That's the noise you make?
Huh?
That's the noise you make knocking
That's the noise you make when you go down. Kersendonk.
Yeah. This is pretty good. This is actually really good. It is 9.5.
Wow.
That's
stout.
Heavy duty.
Yeah. That's stout.
Industrial strength.
Yeah.
So, yeah. One of these days we'll have to do a macro brew night.
Oh, yes. That'd be great.
Yeah. A couple Bud Heavies.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah. Well, we're going to talk about Cask of Amontillado. This is a pretty well-known story. Actually, when I was teaching a while back, I used to teach this on the college level because it is such a well-done, well-contained story.
It is. It's short and brutal.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah.
And it gets to like the heart of some of Poe's darkest fears.
Yes.
He was terrified of being entombed alive.
Right.
As a lot of people at the time were. And we'll probably get into that, but Saved by the Bell, that saying?
Yeah.
You know where it comes from, right?
Right. The little bell, they would string a bell onto a line and run it into the coffin. And if you came to in your coffin, you could ring that bell and they would come dig you up.
Yeah. That
happened a lot.
History is fascinating.
Yes.
And
brutal.
People are, people say it's the violent video games, but video games didn't exist back then. They were still chopping people's heads off. So, I think people have always been rough.
You stop and you think for a moment about what you see on a video game, and then put that on somebody that lived through the American Civil War or the Revolution, or just life on in a frontier town. Because life in a frontier town could be pretty brutal.
Oh yeah, as we see in your novella.
Yes. Thank you.
Give a little plug.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that in Poe's biography.
Oh yeah.
And you've got some excellent notes here on Poe's biography.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Let's do.
The Cask of Amontillado was first published in November in 1846.
Mm-hmm.
It was in an issue of Goody's Ladies Book, which
Mm-hmm.
was at the time one of the most popular periodicals in America. You know,
Okay.
he was not one of those people who had no success until after he was gone. He
Oh
was
no,
pretty
he
well
was
known at
very
the time.
successful. Yeah.
Yeah, he was known both for his writing and for his criticism.
Yes.
He was a very well-known critic.
Mm-hmm.
I think in our first episode, I read some of his criticism
Yeah.
of Hawthorne, which
Mm-hmm.
in which he sort of outlines the blueprint of the American short story.
Yes.
So very well known, very well respected. The
Mm-hmm.
Raven was a critical success and a popular success.
Mm-hmm.
Cask of
It's rare.
Amontillado.
It's rare that a poet is recognized in their lifetime.
Very rare, especially one who was doing something so avant-garde.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And before Poe, Americans, when they looked to literature, they looked to English literature. With the
absolutely.
advent of Poe, Americans looked to America for literature.
He brought it home.
Mm-hmm.
He was the progenitor. You know,
Right.
So in a lot of ways, horror is an American art form.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
it is the jazz of literature, right?
Yes. Yes. That's apt. Yes.
Yeah. So the story was published an additional time during his life in the New England Weekly Review, and that was in 1846. Poe had sort of a rough, short life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He did.
He was born in 1809, January 19th, in Boston. And, you know, he's a Bostonian through and through, hometown
Mm-hmm.
boy. Both his father and mother died before he was 3. They were professional actors. And he was raised by the Allen family in Richmond, Virginia.
And it's
So,
important. I think it's important to note here that actors in the early 1800s, it was definitely not a respected profession.
no, it's only in recent history that it's become respected.
Right. Right.
You know, I know that in Shakespeare's time they were viewed as liars,
Yes.
which is kind of like, you know, then why are you going?
Yeah.
Because the globe wasn't exactly empty.
No, it was not. And of course, we have this skewed vision of Shakespeare. You know, we elevate him and we call him the bard, but really, Shakespeare was writing for the masses. And it was not well thought of to go to the refined, respectable people didn't go to the Globe Theater.
Yeah, they actually recreated some of his plays, and you know when you go see them, if you know the language,
Mm-hmm.
right, and understand
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
full of dick jokes, just
Oh
so
yeah,
many dick jokes.
yeah, yeah. He Shakespeare is somewhere between pornography and horror.
Yeah,
So he's kind of like the Amicus of the 1600s.
yeah. I heard him described as the John Hughes
Mm-hmm.
of
Very apt.
the age.
Yeah.
You know, like so. Anyway, back to Poe. He went to boarding school and then the University of Virginia. He was a great student, brilliant, brilliant mind. Had to leave school because his dad or his foster father refused to pay his gambling debts,
Right.
which that's where we start to see some of the seeds of what his life is going to become like later.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had a lot of personal problems,
Yes.
a lot of them. You know, opiate user,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Heavy drinker.
Heavy drinker, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he would drink, what is it, absinthe.
Oh, yeah.
Back when you used to cut it with wormwood and laudanum.
Yes. The Green Fairy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, which, if you've ever had absinthe, you would need a fairy to come to you. You need help.
I have, and ironically.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, you gotta have some sort of mythical being to guide you through that. So he returned to Richmond, Virginia, but his relationship with his foster father deteriorated. In 1827, he moved to Boston, enlisted in the Army. His first collection of poems, Tamburlaine and Other Poems, was published that year. In 1829, he published a second collection. They didn't receive a lot of attention at the time. Now, following his service, he was admitted to the United States Military Academy, but he was again forced to leave because of lack of financial support. He moved into the home of his aunt and her daughter in Baltimore, Maryland. He began to sell short stories to magazines around this time, and in 1835, he became the editor of the Southern Literary Messenger in Richmond, where he moved with his aunt and cousin to Virginia. In 1836, he married his cousin Virginia, who was 13 years old.
Yep.
Not uncommon at the time, and there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not that was just a marriage of convenience to help her out, whether it was romantic or not.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say he probably it was probably an arrangement, you know.
I would think that it was, yeah.
Because he didn't write poems about her.
No.
You know?
Yeah.
You know. Over the next 10 years, he would edit a number of literary journals, including Gentleman's Magazine, Graham's Magazine, and the Broadway Journal. He established himself as a poet and a short story writer and an editor, and he published some of his best-known work, including The Fall of the House of Usher, The Telltale Heart, which we'll get to at some point.
Oh, yeah.
The Murders in the Rue Morgue, and, of course, The Raven.
Yes.
After his wife died from tuberculosis, he sort of descended into depression and his alcoholism worsened. He returned to Richmond in 1849 and set out for an editing job. He stopped in Baltimore. On April 3rd, 1849, he was found in a state of semi-consciousness. He died 4 days later.
No.
They diagnosed him with acute congestion of the brain, which was sort of a catch-all diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically it meant swelling, hemorrhaging.
Doctor saying, hey, he screwed up. We don't know.
Yeah. A lot of speculation as to whether or not he was rabid.
Yeah.
He also could have been, there were a lot of people going around and they would catch people, get them drunk, beat them up, rob them. That might have happened because there are some reports that he wasn't wearing his own clothes. He was wearing someone else's.
Right. It's a very, very strange death.
Yeah.
In American history. And there's been a lot of discussion about what actually might have happened. I've even heard some speculation that it was entirely possible that his worst fears were realized and he was buried alive because he was in drug-induced coma. So,
which could very well have been true and would have been fitting.
It would, yeah. So there's a lot of speculation about that. One thing that I wanted to ask you, and it's something that a teacher said in high school that's always stuck with me. He blamed himself for Virginia's death because they were poor. And of course, tuberculosis isn't caused by exposure, but it's made worse. And its exposure worsened her condition and she died. And then he blamed himself for that.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I believe it is, because afterwards he definitely worsens. You know, substance abuse gets worse, his depression gets worse, his output, his because he was a very prolific writer.
Yes.
But not so much towards the end.
Right.
I think he probably did blame himself. It's hard to speculate on a person's intentions and their inner thoughts, but they could have moved. There were a lot of things that could have happened. He kept taking writing jobs, and a lot of times they suggested warm air for tuberculosis, warm, dry air, and he didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been to Baltimore. It's muggy.
Yeah, it's not a place to have consumption.
No. I don't think there are too many good places to have consumption.
No. Of course, they sent a lot of people to Arizona and the Southwest.
Yeah,
but this was before that was really a possibility.
Yeah, so God, that would be the worst travel bureau ad ever.
Yes, it would be.
Come to New Mexico. It's a great place to have consumption.
Join Doc and Tombstone. Get an extra 3 years.
Yeah. Ugh. So, but this is one of his well-known stories. It's like I said, it's well taught. It's it's well discussed.
It's my favorite Poe story.
Really?
Yeah, I love the Cask of Amontillado, and I think I love it so much because I love the short in Tales of Terror, where it's Vincent Price and Peter Lorre. Vincent Price plays Fortunata, and Peter Lorre plays Montresor, and that's one of my favorite shorts. Yeah. And this is one of my favorite stories.
When did that come out?
I've got it in my notes. I believe it was 60. Oh, shoot. Hang on just a second. 1962. 1962.
Because I remember that one. Also, later, Vincent Price did a dramatic reading of the story.
He did.
Yeah.
And that's if
you want to look it up, is available on YouTube. Yeah. It's really pretty good.
And if you haven't heard it, you should hear it. I tell you what, Vincent Price could read just about anything and make it sound good.
Yeah, I always wanted to get a parrot and leave in a room with Vincent Price movies and see if it'd talk all spooky.
Yes.
But, I have other aspirations, but that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
So, I guess you want to get into the story a little bit?
Let's get into the story a little bit. One of the things that strikes me right out of the gate is Montresor is talking about this guy who, Fortunata, he has suffered insults at the hands of Fortunata. There's no explanation.
No.
He doesn't tell us what the insults were. Mm-hmm. We just are to understand that that Montresor has taken them very badly, but that Fortunata still believes that they're friends.
The exact wording is really interesting here.
Okay.
Now, I'm glad we started here because, you might as well start with the first sentence.
Yes.
1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so ventured upon insult doesn't even necessarily mean that it was intentional.
Right.
In fact, it probably wasn't.
Right. Because you get the feeling that Fortunata has no reason not to trust him.
Yeah. He goes on to say, and I mean, like we talked about before, Poe says, if you're not with the first sentence pushing towards the end, then you failed.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So he says, "You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that gave utterance to a threat. That I gave utterance to a threat."
That is.
So he doesn't threaten him.
Mhm.
He doesn't say anything about it. He just logs it away.
The old Mongol proverb, "Revenge is a dish best served cold."
Was that Mongol?
It is actually Mongol, yes.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Klingon.
It gets adapted by the Klingons, but yeah.
Okay. Well, now I feel dumb. I'm like, I didn't know that was a real proverb.
That is actually a real proverb. Yeah.
So, let's run through what happens because it's a short story.
It's a very short story.
So basically, Montresor is talking to an unspecified audience, you, the reader, right?
Yeah.
And he's talking about the day he takes his revenge on Fortunato. So he runs into him at Carnival.
Yes.
Fortunato is wearing a jester's motley, which is sort of like a Harlequin piebald costume. He's wearing the bells, the belt cap. He's dressed like a fool, like a clown.
Yes.
Which we'll get back to. It's not exactly the subtle imagery. So,
not at all, but yeah.
Yeah. So he lures him into the catacombs under his mansion by telling him that he's obtained a pipe, which is about 130 gallons of what he believes to be Amontillado, which, as far as I can tell, is a rare sherry. I think we were talking before we started recording today. I was in the liquor store today looking for it, and it's not around. So
I've never seen it, and I have crawled through many liquor stores in my life.
I thought you were going to say Crips. I was like, wow, dude. A
few of those too.
So he lures him into this crypt by saying, I'm going to ask Lucrece for a private tasting, but Fortunato's like, no, that guy's a fool. I'm a better wine taster.
You do get that Fortunato is awfully full of himself.
Very.
Because he says, Lucrece wouldn't know Amontillado from sherry.
Which is funny because Amontillado is a type of sherry.
Yes.
So
he is definitely he definitely has a high opinion of himself.
Oh yeah. And he's vain. Very vain.
Very vain.
So Fortunato has a bad cough. Montresor keeps saying, no, we'll turn around. It's too wet. It's too dark. The dampness will be bad for you. If we're talking about Poe and the idea of tuberculosis and consumption.
Yes.
This is of an especially dark stroke in the work.
Right.
Fortunato basically says, I will not die of a cough. Montresor agrees, which is pretty funny.
Foreshadowing, yes.
Yeah. And then, long story short, they walk down to the bottom of the crypt into a vault that has been decorated with bones. It's an ossuary.
Yes.
Which is one of my favorite words. And it has such a rich sound to it, and it's so creepy. An ossuary. Means chapel of bones. And he tells him, okay, you see that niche over there? That is where the Amontillado is. When Fortunato walks in there, Fortunato's pretty drunk at this point. When Fortunato walks in there, Montresor follows him in, chains him to the wall, and entombs him alive.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yeah.
He reveals that 50 years later, he's still in there. No one has disturbed the bones.
The thing that gets me is that there is no remorse at all, except for he does say that when Fortunata is pretending that it's a joke, he shines the light in and he feels a little bit bad when Fortunata doesn't answer, but then he said, oh, that's just the dampness of the cellar.
Yeah. No answer still.
Yeah.
I thrust the torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within.
Yeah.
There came in return only a jingling of bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so.
Yeah.
And then he ends with, in Latin, may he rest in peace.
Yes.
So
here is, speaking of Latin, a section of this that really interested me. During their talk, or during their walk, Montresor mentions his family coat of arms, a golden foot and a blue background crushing a snake whose fangs are embedded in the foot's heel with the motto, Nemo me impuni lascit. No one provokes me with impunity. Which is that's a pretty grim Latin motto to have on your coat of arms. But then the coat of arms itself is a reference to a line in Genesis where the serpent, God tells Eve that your progeny shall tread on the serpent, and the serpent shall bruise their heels.
Yeah. So my question for you is, which is Montresor?
That's one I've been trying to figure out. Is Montresor the serpent, or is he the person treading on the serpent?
Because conventional wisdom would have it that he's the foot because it's his crest. But
this is the original sin. I mean, this is evil. Yeah.
I think he's probably the serpent. I think he's probably been crushed. Mm-hmm. What do you think the insult was?
This is why I wanted to bring that. I get the feeling that, Montresor's family is old money. They're nobility. Mm-hmm. And he has a coat of arms. And Fortunata is new money. Mm-hmm. And he, only someone that's new money would name a child Fortunata. That's not something that a noble would do. That's ostentatious. Then you've got the fact that he makes the Masonic sign, and Montresor doesn't know how to answer it. And he says, "Oh, you're not a Mason?" And he produces a trowel from out of his coat as a symbol that he is a Mason. He's really not. So
he's a Mason of sorts.
He's a Mason of sorts, not that kind of Mason. So Fortunata is this Nova Reach person who is kind of lording it over everybody, probably not intending to insult anybody. Yeah. But his very existence is an insult to someone that comes from the old nobility. That would be my take on it.
Yeah, because I can't imagine. Well, I mean, this gets into something I wanted to talk about a little bit.
Okay.
This is an unreliable narrator.
Absolutely.
A lot of Poe's narrators are unreliable, right? Mm-hmm. He has every reason to lie to you. Mm-hmm. To make himself look better, to make himself look harder. Mm-hmm. But he's already telling a story that would incriminate him, right?
Yes.
So one wonders, is this person insane?
Yes. He's a sociopath. I mean, the fact that he has one little bit of remorse, but he rejects that remorse and says it's just the dampness, says, man, this dude he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
You can't even begin to connect it.
No,
So,
absolutely not. And in
what
his mind,
what was the name of the guy in American Psycho?
Oh, I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't remember.
Bateman, right?
Yes, Bateman. That's it.
Yeah, there's an element of that in here.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that obsession with the surface level.
Yes.
Montresor seems like the kind of person who you would look into their eyes and there's nothing there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Shark's eyes.
Exactly.
Another famous Poe work with an Unreliable Narrator is, of course, The Telltale Heart.
Of course, yes.
The Telltale Heart, beginning with nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I have been and am.
Mm-hmm.
But why will you say that I'm mad? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again as a warning to anyone out there. If someone says, why would you say I'm crazy? That means they're crazy.
That's right.
You know, if someone says, I'm not crazy,
you can put some money on it. They need a trip to go away to the farm. Yeah, I feel like that we're dealing with, okay, you look at the way this story is told, and Montresor is reflecting on this a half century afterwards.
Yeah.
Which means he's got to be at least in his 80s.
I would say 70s maybe, but yeah.
70s.
An old man.
An old man.
Yeah.
And normally you would expect an old man to look back on something like this. An old man who's nearing death, who's staring at his own mortality, to try and explain it to the reader and say, you know, I made a mistake. I did, but there's none of that. Montresor opens up by telling us why he was justified in doing this.
Yeah. There's none of that. And we'll get back to this again and again as we talk about horror in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Judeo-Christian values inherent in American society, right?
Right.
Repentance, turning the other cheek, right? Mm-hmm. None of that.
Nope.
You know, he's very proud to have not turned the other cheek.
Yes.
And then Judeo-Christian values, I mean, it's a big underpinning in American literature.
Oh, it's huge.
I mean, think of Hawthorne's greatest work, one of the great American novels, The Scarlet Letter.
Hawthorne was absolutely driven by Puritan influences.
Mm-hmm.
And many of the, you know, probably the first generation of American writers came from New England, and they were all influenced by Puritan thought.
Yeah, because it is such a foundation of that area, you know. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, down here in the South, we have, and by the way, spoilers, Duke and I are from the South, if you couldn't tell.
We are.
Not that the accents gave anything away. But down here you had Huguenots, you had Calvinists, you had the odd Catholic. It was a more of a mixed bag.
It was a mixed bag, and it was much more open and liberal. And that's difficult because now the tables are reversed. Absolutely. And the South tends to be more fundamentalist. But up until the American Civil War, the South, in terms of its religiosity, was much more open and much more liberal.
And that has a lot to do with what was called the Great Revival.
Mm-hmm.
which was a religious movement right after the Civil War.
Right.
Um, but we'll
We
get
have
in.
we have sinned, so we lost.
Yeah. So, and that plays into that idea of the lost cause,
Right.
which is which is one of the shames. But we're straying far afield.
We've left the cask of Amontillado behind.
Yeah. Now we're talking about Faulkner. Are we talking about Faulkner now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get back to Poe.
Okay. A little lighter. A
Yeah.
little lighter than Absalom.
Yes.
So there's a lot of dramatic irony in the story. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's usually what it's taught as.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny.
It is funny
It's
in a sick
darkly
way.
funny.
It's very black, but it's funny.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're not going to die of a cough, Fortunata.
Oh yeah. I mean, the first time I really understood
Mm-hmm.
the joke that is him producing the trowel to say I'm a mason,
Mm-hmm.
that's pretty good. That's a good
Yeah,
joke.
that is a good joke.
That is a solid joke right there.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I think that's often overlooked in Poe's work
Mm-hmm.
is how funny he is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Imp of the Perverse by him,
Yeah.
which is about a spirit that comes to you when you're too drunk, is hilarious.
Yes, it is. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's made out of empty wine bottles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When I was a kid, full disclosure, I was a spooky kid, and I had Poe's complete works, right?
Yes. Yes,
And I
I
just
did too.
poured over it again and again.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
Yes.
And part of it was this mixture of just dark humor
Mm-hmm.
and the macabre.
Yes.
Um,
Poe is totally at home with the macabre.
oh yeah,
And when you have, I mean, okay, there is a tale that Hawthorne writes, and I don't even remember the name of it, but it's like the farmer's wife. It's a witch out in the woods or something. I don't remember. But he's telling it, it's almost, you can tell that he's ashamed of himself for telling it.
yeah,
Poe embraces it, baby.
oh yeah,
That's his gig, and he's happy with it.
oh yeah. He's all there. He's
Mm-hmm.
all in. He's actually sort of the father of the American Gothic tale.
Yes. Yeah.
Gothic, and this is my own theory on the Gothic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So indulge me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Gothic has three main elements:
Yes.
isolation,
Mm-hmm.
inversion,
Mm-hmm.
and perversion,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So if you look at something like Castle of Otranto, which comes out in the early, what year was that? I want to say it's the early 1800s, but contemporary with Poe.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at Frankenstein and you look at something like Dracula, you see this over and over.
Right.
But it's really at home in Poe's work,
Yes.
right? So inversion.
Mm-hmm.
You see inversion here with the Mason joke,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of the foot and the serpent,
Mm-hmm.
the inversion of Christian values,
Mm-hmm.
puritanical values, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
all taking something and flipping it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I agree. And I will tell you, we're very comfortable with Dracula. We're very comfortable with Frankenstein. Poe was writing pulp fiction 100 years before the pulp magazines existed. The world is not comfortable in the same room with Poe.
Even now, it's upsetting.
It's upsetting. Yes. I can read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and go sleep like a baby.
Oh yeah.
I read this, chills are running up and down my spine.
There's something so aggressive about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the difference between a rock song and a death metal song.
Yes.
One of them's rebellious, the other one's in your face dark.
Yes. Yes.
At
the end of the day, Mary Shelley is writing in defense of the social order. She is writing to say Dr. Frankenstein is evil for trying to subvert God's order and create this being. Poe doesn't care about any of that.
He doesn't weigh in one way or the other.
No, he doesn't. He's just writing this story about this sociopathic murderer and his tale of revenge.
Yeah. So we see that inversion.
Yeah.
The isolation is obvious.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a crypt. They're surrounded by bones. It is
leaking niter, saltpeter in the cracks.
Yeah.
Because the crypt actually runs beneath a river.
Yeah. So you're as far down and deep and buried, right?
Mm-hmm. It's dank, it's dripping. It probably smells like sulfur.
Yeah.
It's just a nasty place.
It's hell.
Yes.
It's literally hell.
Yeah.
In a very Sumerian way, it's hell.
Yes.
And then, of course, the perversity, the supernatural, the insanity, the grotesquerie,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all present.
Yes. Here is something else that fascinates me.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunata pleads and begs to come out.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. And then Fortunata starts laughing. And he says, "Oh, this is a hilarious joke. But isn't it time to let me out and we'll go meet Mrs. Fortunata and the other revelers?" And then when that track fails, he falls silent. And we already discussed the fact that Montresor sticks a torch in. All he hears is the bells.
Yeah.
There's no answer.
Yeah.
So did he die? Did he just give up and realize that there's no use anymore? I mean,
I think he just gave up.
Yeah, I think he did too. That was my feeling, that he just gave up.
Which is another super dark moment.
Yeah. Not only did he kill him, he broke him.
He broke him. And that mentioning his wife and his friends in the end. And Montresor's like, yeah, they're going to miss you.
Yep.
No arguments there. Yeah, they sure are going to miss you.
It's a little bit Lovecraftian in that both of them are, Montresor's definitely a sociopath. And then the last we see of Fortunata, he has lost his mind.
Yeah. And Lovecraftian is it's a word we're going to bandy around a lot, but Lovecraft is sort of
maybe it would be more appropriate to say that Lovecraft was Poean.
I think so, because I think he was definitely influenced by Poe and Derleth and people who came before him.
If you've ever been through a high school English class, you're influenced by Poe. Either that or you didn't do your homework.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do either, but still influenced by Poe.
My earliest memories of Poe.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I mentioned, I'm co-host a horror show, and I grew up watching one every city that had TV stations had a horror host, and they did Shock Theater or whatever they called it regionally. Our horror host in Chattanooga was Dr. Shock and Dingbat. But every once in a while, they would read a Poe poem, a short Poe poem that was creepy or scary or funky, or they'd have students read one, different things. So I remember that. And of course, a lot of times what they'd be playing were the Roger Corman, Vincent Price, loosely Poe-based movies.
Yeah.
And so that was my first exposure to Edgar Allan Poe.
You know what one of my first exposures to Poe was?
What's that?
The Simpsons.
The what?
The Simpsons.
Oh, yes.
Treehouse of Horror, where they did the Raven.
Yeah, they did the Raven. I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good one. And I think Poe lends himself uniquely to the horror host genre.
Yes.
Because he is so in your face.
Yes.
Horror host is, I don't know, like goth drag in a way,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's campy, it's kitschy, but it's earnest.
Yes.
And Poe was a lot of things, but he was earnest.
Yes, he was.
He was trying to produce the most bang for your buck, He says in his review of Twice Told Tales by Hawthorne that, a skillful literary artist, and I'm paraphrasing, a skillful literary artist has fashioned his events to serve his singular effect.
Right.
Now, it just so happens that Poe's singular effect was horror.
Yes.
What would you say to the statement that horror and pornography are the two sides of the same coin?
I would say that that's very accurate. Two sides of strong emotions,
a visceral effect.
Visceral violence often plays in both.
Yeah. And it produces a literal physical reaction.
Yes.
A release of endorphins.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and something that I love about Poe, I don't know of anybody that is a more eloquent writer. I've never read a more eloquent writer. Now, I will tell you that Tolkien understands all shades of the meaning of a word going back 1,200 years. So
because he was a linguist.
He was a linguist. So Tolkien will use the English language in ways that nobody else ever uses it. But Poe is a more elegant writer. And a more elegant, more beautiful writer you could never imagine. But you don't guess at the symbolism with Poe.
No.
There's no guessing. It's not contrived. He hits you with it, bam, and you know what he's trying to say.
Oh, yeah. Who do you think was more, the Fool, Fortunato, Montresor, which, they're just layers upon layers of symbols, right?
Yes.
But they're all very obvious.
Right.
Do you think that's a matter of not trusting your audience?
I think, given the world that Poe was writing in, it's a matter of understanding your audience.
Okay.
He was dealing with people who, the United States in the 1830s was not, higher education was relatively rare.
Yeah.
And so most of his people had enough education to read.
Yeah.
And they would have known, the one book they would have known would have been the Bible.
So that's where you get a lot of biblical references.
That's why you get a lot of biblical references. That is kind of lingua franca at that time. And at this time too, you can still do that.
Yeah.
But he was dealing with people that probably could read the paper, but that was about it. And he knew
So,
that.
so he was speaking to the masses, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, I don't know. I love this story. I love Poe in general, though.
I do too.
Um, even the really bad, like 60s and 70s reimaginings, as it were.
Oh, yeah. They're some of the best movies ever made. Tales of Terror is one of my favorite of that genre. It
Yeah.
has the Cask of Amontillado, which they kind of mess around with it, and
It's
in that
part.
telling of the story, uh, Montresor is jealous because Fortunata is making time with his wife,
There you go.
and Montresor is one of the best wine tasters in Italy, but he gets drunk, falling down drunk. And so Fortunata takes him home one night when he's too drunk to get home, and he keeps his wife company that evening. And Montresor finds out. And I think they did that because they probably felt like it was too vague a thing. If they left it the way Poe wrote it, it was too vague for people to grasp onto. So they made it very. But that same show had the Strange Case of M. Valdemar, and I can't think of the other one, but there's another good one in there too.
Now that's my favorite Poe story.
Yes, that's a good one. That is a good one.
It's creepy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very creepy. It's I saw and I don't remember where I saw this, but this was someone that has spent their whole life studying Poe, a Poe historian, if you will. And this person was talking about the fact that Poe essentially invented American horror.
Uh-huh.
Poe invented the detective story.
Yes.
Poe
With
invented science fiction. I mean,
I'll disagree with you there because I think Wells did.
I think Wells did too, but what this person was arguing that the roots were there in Poe.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I agree with that everything she said, but I have to agree with the horror and the detective story.
Absolutely. There's actually no disagreement there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean the Purloined Letter, Murders in the Rue Morgue,
Mm-hmm.
those are
detective stories.
Yeah. And the first ones.
Yeah.
It's so weird to think that wasn't a thing yet.
Right.
Like, this guy was out there blazing a trail.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have people like Lovecraft, like Howard, like Stephen King, who we'll be talking about in a couple weeks.
Yes, we will.
Come back, and they can't get away from those roots.
No.
Those three things I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Isolation, inversion, and perversion. Those are always going to be present in American horror. Even in American Gothic. Like, you look at someone like Flannery O'Connor.
Yes.
You still see it there.
Yeah.
You see it in Faulkner. You see it in Hemingway.
Yes. Well, and I will go, okay, probably the two classic Gothic horror tales are Dracula and Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Definitely you have those three elements in Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have them in Frankenstein as well.
Yeah.
And they're exploited. But you want to get really serious about your vampires. Carmilla.
Oh, yes. Carmilla.
Yes.
Okay, so Dracula is an important work. Carmilla is a great work.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a distinction.
There is a definite distinction. And, you read, here again, I can read Dracula and lay down at night and feel perfectly safe. You read Carmilla, that's some scary stuff.
Oh yeah, it gets under your skin in a weird way.
Yes,
You
good
know,
horror does. If it
yeah,
doesn't get under your skin, it's not good horror.
yeah. What was the old saying? I think it was a William Castle movie that used it. It was if it doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Or the classic, just keep telling yourself it's only a movie.
Yes.
So, well, I think that's about our time for this week.
So.
What you got to pitch?
What have I got to pitch? Well, Tennessee Macabre is going to be on. We're moving to 3 different broadcast networks now.
Excellent.
We're going to be on ECN Channel 01, which is an internet channel. It's based in Florida, but if you got a computer, you can pull it up. We come on at 10 o'clock Eastern time. And this week we will be showing House on Haunted Hill starring Vincent Price. Of course, by the time this is out, that will already have been done. I forgot we're recording ahead, but you can tune in Saturday nights at 10 on ECN Channel 01. You can catch us on Roku and Kindle on ITV Chattanooga at 10 o'clock Central Time. That's 11 Eastern. And then at midnight, you can catch us on Otherworlds TV on Roku. And all those times are on Saturday nights. There's 3 different places you can catch us Saturday night.
Now, if you haven't watched Otherworlds TV, it is a blast.
Yes, it is.
They do a thing on their website. Are they still doing that where you can vote off a movie?
Yes, you can vote. You can vote a movie off. And once a week, they vote somebody to the island. And of course, you can go in with Otherworlds TV that you can download the Otherworlds app and watch Otherworlds TV totally free. Yeah. But you can pay $5 to Patreon and get the Otherworlds Vault, and you can pull up anything that they have, and they have a considerable collection. But they actually have a heading for all the movies that have been voted off, so you can go watch them. And some of them are a trip, man.
You know, it reminds me of just like the early days of, and I was watching something about video stores, right?
Yeah, yes.
And I miss video stores.
I do too.
There used to be a place in Athens when I lived there. I was a young punk living in Athens and playing in a punk band and not going to school. And we used to go to a place called Vision Video. Shout out to a dead, defunct video store.
Yeah.
We used to go to this place called Vision Video, and they had a 5 for $5 deal. And basically, they had a whole rack that just said cult.
Yes.
And it was all the trauma movies, all the weird stuff,
Yes. I love those video stores.
Some stuff I wish I hadn't seen.
And that was a whole industry, just like the drive-in movie industry had been 15 years before. There was a whole horror industry that was dedicated to just producing these movies for video and getting them out to people.
Oh yeah, straight to VHS.
Straight to VHS.
Yeah, I grew up on straight to VHS.
I did too.
Yeah. So, but they had a 5 for $5 deal, so I'd rent one movie I thought would be good, and then 4 that I was like, well, Rockabilly Vampire seems all right.
Why not?
Which, if you haven't seen that one, it's a trip. Not making it up. So, but yeah, Otherworlds TV reminds me of that. It's like being stuck in a video store with the hipster kid.
Yes.
It's like, no, you got to see this.
Yes.
And they're right most of the time.
Yes.
If they're wrong, you can vote it off. So,
Yeah, and they've got all kinds of titles. I mean, if you haven't tuned into Other Worlds TV, you need to. You're going to love it.
Yeah. So.
And they have a lot of horror hosts other than Neil and I. I mean, there's Friday through Sunday is all horror hosts. So,
which is awesome.
Yeah. So, what do you got?
Well, my band Blood Oaks is recording our full length album, North Georgia Death Cult.
Yeah.
Which the album name will probably change 3 times before this airs, but we're going back and forth. But I'm voting North Georgia Death Cult, and I'm singing and playing banjo in that, and I've got Pulp Factory, which we just opened up, and we're starting to do a whole new set. Basically, what Pulp Factory is it's a love letter to Weird Tales.
Yes, indeed.
We publish a piece of prompt art every month, and we encourage people to write based on that prompt art. We also take just horror, sci-fi, fantasy, genre fiction of any kind, crime, thriller. You know, we're now accepting artwork and poetry, and we'll be publishing some editorials. And I'm going to be publishing something coming up soon about the creature from the Black Lagoon and post-colonialism.
Yeah.
You know, because that's a really important film. You know,
it's huge. It's huge. One of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
And we actually licensed the creature about 2 years ago and showed it at a backyard drive-in, and that was a lot of fun. Can't do it on TV because I can't license it, but it drove horror for 20 years. I mean, people were trying to replicate it.
Well, you know, and it was one of the first monsters created by a woman, you know, the monster design. And it's a groundbreaking film. So,
yes.
I'll be writing an analysis about that. And so, anyway, and the idea of the sympathetic monster.
Yes. Because the creature is very sympathetic.
Yeah.
He's perfectly happy to stay in the Amazon and not bother anybody.
Yeah. Just wants to hang out and eat fish.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, that's it for Reaper's Digest. We'll see you in 2 weeks where we'll be discussing Salem's Lot.
Yes, indeed. Stephen King. So please join us. You don't want to miss that.
Oh, absolutely not. It's going to be a heavy hitter, 2-part episode. I'm going to try and get Duke drunk. It'll be great.
Well, you don't have to try too hard.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.
Good night.